Video?
Yep. Hey y'all, Nick Pomeroy here, PR Equipment in Kearns, Texas. Today we're actually out in the hay field for the In the Cab. It's actually...
You're literally in the cab.
Literally in the cab, and it's literally, what is it, about 8:15 p.m. I'm out here with Caleb Pruitt. You might have seen him in some of our other videos. So this is the first time we've done In the Cab with a guest host. Anyway, Caleb and I were actually demoing a 5711D. He owns a 5710 non-Dyna. We're demoing a 5711D. He's pulling his 1745 Massey baler with, and we're trying to get a little hay rolled up before it gets too dadgum dark.
We got lights though.
We got lights.
Good.
Caleb, how's it going?
Pretty good. This tractor's running smooth. We've got the field conditions are a little bumpy. A little rough field. It's the first time we've cut and baled this field, so it's new, but you know, it's a great chance to compare the 5710 that I own in this tractor. Because the first thing you asked me, can you feel the cab suspension? I kind of said, yeah, not really, but then we hit a pretty good rut, and I said, you can feel the cab suspension. That would have rattled my teeth in the other tractor. So.
Well, and I think, you know, there's a couple key differences between the tractors, right? So obviously in this tractor we've got a power shift transmission, the Dyna 4. It's a 16-speed power shift, so we're playing a little bit with that.
Yeah.
Obviously cab suspension, which is pretty slick.
Yeah.
So there's a few differences, a lot of similarities,
yes.
but a few differences.
Yeah. The nice thing is ergonomically everything's in the same spot, feels the same, distances are the same. View looks real similar, so it's not a huge change from the environment until you really start noticing some of those things, like we're sitting here running Eco, it's a lot quieter.
Yeah, and there's, like, say, there's a few, there's some nicer features to it, but I think that the cool thing about this D-Series tractor is it's got some of the nice features, but it's not overly complicated.
No.
It's a simple tractor.
It is.
But it gets you some of the features that I think you look for in a you know, that next level of tractor.
For sure.
And it's not at a horrible price point, comparatively speaking. Like, it is more money, but it's not horrible.
Well, and that's the thing, like you literally put me in this tractor. The first time I've actually even driven one. I hadn't even driven one in your yard yet. And I'm able to just jump in it, hook up my baler, and start rolling it. That says something about the simplicity of things, and you know, just kind of the turnkey type of machine that it is. You know, there's not just a huge learning gap or learning curve between the tractors. So, you know, if you're upgrading from one, that's you know, any similarity as far as size and power, you'll be in good shape as far as not having a big learning curve.
So, and I don't know that you've noticed a ton of a difference, but another difference between the 5710 and the 5711D, at least in this situation, this tractor is equipped with an FL series loader with a soft ride. You can kind of see the loader working. You can watch the cylinders kind of letting it float a little bit. It's a little hard to tell when we're in this bumpy field just how much it's doing, especially with the baler hooked up in the slower speeds. I think that's something you'd notice more if you were hauling bales.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you were moving a bit faster across this field.
Right.
You can see it sitting there floating.
Kind of floating a little bit.
We're in a rough enough field that it's actually using that function.
And obviously, if you had more weight on the loader, two bales or whatever, you're going to start to see that kind of compound.
For sure.
But that's enough about the tractor. How's hay season 2022 going?
Hay season. We were, you know, it was kind of one of those things. It felt like yesterday I was sitting there in the cold, stoking the fire, the wood burning stove, and going, man, I'm kind of ready for hay season. And now we're full blown in it, and I'm like, golly, ready to start feeding some of this hay in the winter, I think. But it's been good. It's been a little dry this year. Not gonna lie, I mean, it's I think everybody I've talked to says, man, yields aren't what they've been. Guys that were picking up a lot of spots, you know, little spots, are really looking hard at those smaller spots now, going, man,
doesn't even make sense.
It's not gonna crank out the bales. I can't touch it. That diesel prices are stupid.
Oh, definitely. So when you look at diesel prices and things, you start to make a different calculation in your head.
Definitely.
You know,
it's a big factor when you put together, you know, just a basic financial statement of this business, diesel's a huge expense, and it's an even huger expense this year. So,
well, if anybody told you farming was easy, they lied to you.
that's it.
So,
yeah.
Grandpa always said the hard times build character, and I think it may be a little bit of a character building year.
It's going to be a character builder, that's no doubt. Break off and go over here and pick this up real quick.
But you know, one thing I think that, you know, people oftentimes overlook, or at least to be honest with you, even in a sales role, I haven't talked a lot about the fact that fuel economy matters. The last few years, it hasn't been something we've talked about. But
nobody's talked about fuel economy in the past couple of years.
We haven't even cared, right?
We've had diesel as cheap as it's ever been 3 years ago. In the past 15 years.
It's crazy, and now here we are sitting with record high diesel, and it certainly changes the calculation. And if you're looking at what your cost per bale is, I mean, if you can reduce the amount of diesel down, let's cut that in half. The cost per bale changes drastically. And I know you mentioned you have a 4430 Deere.
Yeah.
Great tractor. I'm not knocking the 4430 Deere.
Solid.
Too bad they don't build them all like that no more. But fuel consumption wise, how does it compare?
Oh, it's twice the fuel. Literally, it's exactly twice the fuel. And it does the same amount of work with more displacement, and so it's having to burn more fuel to do the same job. And you know, there was a day and age where that was a great thing, man. If you could just put a lot of displacement out, do an unlimited amount of work, it was cool. But you know, now we're having to think about things differently to have some built-in sustainability in this business. You gotta think about that. So it's no doubt a little different than what we're used to. But it's you know, the big Deere burns a lot of fuel, and so that's a deciding factor when you get into fields like this. It's like, well, let's start rolling hay. What do you want to use? And it's like, well, I'm gonna avoid this log.
Probably shouldn't hit the log.
Let's not suck.
Just to be clear, a PSA, logs are not covered under warranty. And you should probably try to avoid logs to the best of your ability.
Sucking a log in your baler will end the night real quick.
You will get to go home.
Yeah.
And so that is good.
We're going to be sawing it out with a pocket knife in the middle of the field.
The downside is, from a financial standpoint, a log is probably maybe more detrimental than fuel cost. And it's hard to say.
Yeah. You won't save enough fuel if you start sucking logs into a baler.
But like I say,
how's your hay season going, Mr. Dealer Man?
You know, as a dealership, hay season's been a little bit weird this year.
Yeah.
If you'd have asked me in March, I was getting real concerned we weren't going to sell any of the hay equipment we had. I was looking hard at like what I had on the lot and what was going to happen. It seems like the year was a little bit delayed. Obviously, we started off a little cooler than we normally do, and obviously a little light on the rain. And I think there was a few people that were kind of concerned, but you've also, you know, you still got to make hay. Yeah. And so I will say, in the last, you know, probably the end of April and the start of May is when we really started to see that hay, kind of the hay sales pick up. And we're getting to a point where we're actually getting pretty low on inventory. We've still got, you know, we've still got a few lay down cut. We still got some stuff. We got a few balers in stock and a couple small square balers left and things like that. But it has picked up of late. You still got to make hay. We still got to feed these cows, and you know, and obviously it depends on what your role is in this, whether you're feeding hay or whether you're making hay or buying, selling, whatever. You know, it looks to me like hay costs are going up.
Oh yeah. Which,
if you're selling hay, is a great thing. If you're feeding hay, it's not so good. So there's obviously a plus and minus to what's going on there. But I will say, you know, tractor sales have been real strong. Hay equipment sales have been real strong, and I think part of that, as a dealership, we're still growing in this business, and I think if you look at industry trends are actually off a little bit. But at PR equipment, I think we're up. You know, we're up over last year. We're still in grow mode. Don't get me wrong, we put a lot of iron out there, but we're still in grow mode, and we're getting there. So, like say, I'm seeing some of that kind of.
I feel like we're in a higher growth area too, though. I mean, compared to central Iowa, I think a lot more people are moving here. A lot more people are buying small pieces of land.
Well,
and they want a piece of equipment or so, a whole set of equipment.
They want their piece of Texas, and they need to take care of it. And so, you know, equipment comes into play. And for a lot of folks, you know, I think it's kind of in my blood. I know it's in your blood. It's, you know, we kind of want to control some more aspects of that. So making your own hay is kind of natural, and having a decent enough tractor to kind of do the things on your property that you want to do. And we've had a lot of those folks come in. You know, a lot of people moving in the area. A lot of, you know, there's just a lot of first timers. But I'm pretty proud. We've taken a lot of competitive trades in. A lot of customers are starting to kind of put their trust in who PR Equipment is, and put their trust in our service department and parts department, that once we sell it, we're going to take care of it. And so, big picture, you know, there's a lot of positive things at PR Equipment. But,
Do you feel like, and I don't know, this may be total. Do you feel like a lot of people? Obviously, there's a little bit more money in people's pockets right now from everything that's going on. I feel like people want to tie some of that up in equipment. They're looking to.
I think there's part of that. I think honestly,
or is that not as prevalent as I'm thinking it might be?
You know, I don't know, and I know there's some people taking advantages of current prices, right? Because I think we all know prices of everything are going up. And they're also kind of trying to lock in lower interest rates while we have them. Yeah. And you're looking at, you know, when your interest on a new tractor is 2.5% and maybe inflation's hitting it 6 or 7 or whatever it is, you know, there's some advantages to getting it out of cash and putting it into iron. Yeah. Obviously, it still has to make financial sense. You know, I don't ever recommend somebody. You know, it's probably not. You know,
it's not for everybody.
It's not for everybody, but
definitely not for everybody, for sure.
But if you're the type of person who's wanting to do some, you know, it's what you want to do anyway. It's not a bad idea to be looking right now at what's coming, you know, and what you might need in the future and things like that, because we really don't know what next year's going to look like. Ooh, there was a nice little hole.
That's a good bump.
He's got the air ride seat. I do not. I have the buddy seat. And
your buddy seating it, buddy.
I will tell you that the cab suspension is nice, because I don't have any other suspension underneath. So the cab suspension is nice. Yeah. For you sitting in an air ride seat, it's like, yes, cab suspension is nice, but you know, you do have an air ride seat.
It's easy.
A couple other things about where we're at with this. I talked Caleb into running this thing in 540 Eco. You know, talking about fuel costs. We're talking about, you know, even wear and tear on the engine and things like that. If we can run the engine slower and still get the same amount of work done, which with this baler, it's a 4x5 baler matched up with a 110 horsepower tractor, the economy is fine. So we're running at 540 Eco.
I think the PTO requirement on the baler is only 45.
It's 45 minimum, which don't get me wrong, don't ever run minimum, but we're running in 540 Eco. We're doing 1,500 engine RPMs. I mean, we are really low when it comes to fuel consumption.
Just loping along nice and easy.
Just kind of taking it easy. And then obviously the power shift transmission should be able to blast through some gears and get where you need to go. But how's the, you know, Caleb is, as of last year, all his equipment, or at least all his hay equipment and his primary tractor, are all switched over to Massey. How's the hay equipment treating you this year?
Hay equipment's really good. I've been really happy with this baler, and you know, we're sitting here running it. I've run a couple other brands of balers, round balers, and I'll tell you, the thing I keep kind of pressing on people when they're like, well, you know, how's that baler? What's it like? It is just easy. It's simple. There's just not much to it. It's not new crazy technology. It's all pretty old technology. But it's kind of fail-proof. It's just not that complicated, and so it makes it really easy. You know, one guy was like, "Oh, you got your baby powder and all that." And I'm like, "Dude, this ain't a deer.
Yeah.
You don't need baby powder." Literally, like the net wrap systems. There's a log.
Miss it?
I missed it.
Great. Great.
You gotta be on your toes when you're running in a new field like this too.
Is this your first time bailing this field?
This is my first time bailing this field.
Now, have we learned any lessons? I mean, is this field presenting any new challenges?
Nothing I hadn't before.
Just a new field.
No, just a new field, new bumps, new spots. That's crunchy hay. It's got some weeds in it.
Yeah, it's got some
weeds in it that dried up a little more than normal. But no, I've been in some fields that are rough, and you know, if you're cutting hay in Central Texas and you're not just in a pancake of an irrigated field, you're going to have some bumps.
Yeah.
Hogs are a problem. Hogs have torn this field up some in some spots, and that's a lot of fields, and so it's just something you kind of have to live with. Obviously, the more you do them, the better you figure them out, and you know, the smoother they get, because you're running equipment across them. You're running a cutter, you're running a rake. It's knocking dirt mounds down and stuff like that. So, but no, it's this field hadn't been too challenging. There's been a couple of spots that were tricky. There were a couple little stumps that got us in a bind a little bit as far as just blades, but fortunately the mower has held up really, really well. The baler's a dream. The rake is super simple. It's a really well built rake, nice heavy. So it handles the bumps and the terrain fine. And that's really something, you know, that you think about when you buy. When I bought stuff before too, is it's like, man, so you're gonna end up bending stuff. And
so let's talk about your operation for a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously, you run some cows. How many head of cows you running?
We've got about 40 cows right now.
40 cows.
Yeah.
Maybe a little overstock, but
well, so we've got some show calves that we keep basically dry lotted. So they're in the show barn half the time, basically all day, and then they're turned into a small lot at night. We got about 20 commercial mamas that we keep in a pasture, and then we keep a handful of steers that we're feeding right now and stuff like that. So we're kind of scattered and have cows in a few different spots.
So from a cattle's perspective, you kind of dabble in about every part of the market.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, you're feeding them out. You're
feeding them out. We got a commercial cow.
You got mamas.
Commercial cow calf. We got show calves.
I mean, you're pretty much doing it all.
Yeah.
From a hay perspective, what do you try to accomplish in a year? Like, do you have a goal? Like, what are you trying to do?
Well, so the big thing with getting my own hay equipment was I found myself struggling to find hay nearby and find hay at a decent price and find hay when I needed hay, and that got frustrating. And I had some knowledge of hay equipment because I'd run some hay equipment before with family-owned hay equipment, and so I was pretty confident in my abilities to run hay equipment and kind of assess, you know, actual hay quality and where, you know, what was present in the field and stuff like that. So that's what got me into it. I started out really small with some used equipment, and quickly realized that I needed to upgrade after only a few years. Because the opportunity to do more hay, to do bigger patches, presented itself, and I didn't have equipment big enough or reliable enough to take on that amount. And I wanted to grow the cow operation, and that takes feed. And hay is your primary feed during the winter time.
So, are you selling hay, or is it just pretty much feeding it all?
Just feeding it all. I might sell a little bit of hay this year, but I'm trying to avoid being full-blown commercial hay. I want to stay more just feeding my cows. And so, you know, when I scale up, I'm really looking to scale up the number of head that I'm feeding as well.
Do you feel like kind of having that kind of a more of a realistic mindset might help it seem a little more manageable? Like when you're trying to run an operation where you got cows and hay and stuff, but do you think kind of having those expectations might make it, you know, feel a little more manageable?
I think so.
A little less stressful, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. And that's one of the things too, is you when you're getting into this and you're buying hay, you got to put a lot of trust in whoever's providing that hay for you. And I didn't have a reliable source, and you don't know what's in it. And so when you cut the bale your own hay, you're seeing the field in all of its stages. You're seeing the weed load that's in the field, the type of grass that's in the field. You just gain a lot more control.
Yeah.
And that control is pretty critical to feeding cows well. It just really is. And so if you're not baling your own hay and you've got cows, you're feeding cows, you really need to study the hay a lot. Study where you're getting it from, test it, send it off for analysis. If the person selling it already hadn't had it analyzed, send it. I feel like any good hay supplier would be fine with you drilling a core sample out of a few bales and sending it off for analysis. It shouldn't be, especially if they're buying. Now, if you're buying one bale, no, that's kind of
it's a pain in their butt.
It's kind of irrational. But if you're buying a semi-load or two, that's totally normal. That's totally normal, and really should be expected, because if you're buying hay that's 50% weeds, you're buying 50% of the hay.
Yeah.
And you may be paying that much money. So anyway, kind of off on a tangent there. But that's, I've learned a lot baling my own hay, and I'm continuing to be a student of it, trying to learn more as much as I can. I don't feel like you could ever learn enough, and it's constantly changing too. So from the equipment side of it, from the soil health side of it, the land health side of it, from grass types and nutritional value, all that, how to feed it. There's a lot to it. So a lot of people see hay bales and they're like, oh, those are cheaper than those.
Buy the cheapest bale, right?
Yeah, I'll buy the cheapest hay. And it's like, no, that is so far from reality.
Well, I think that's pretty prevalent here in this area in Texas. It's a lot of people only need 5 bales a year, and
what's the difference?
What's the difference? And I just need to feed these cows, and I think it really comes down to wanting to take care of your animals. You've got to care about the health of your animals and the productivity of your animals.
Yes.
I mean,
absolutely.
A lot of people think raising cows, you just got to keep them fed. But if you're really trying to get the most out of those animals, you got to have some control over your operation.
You got to have a lot of control. If you can't, the phrase is in general, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
You can't measure it, you can't manage it.
So to be able to manage it, you got to measure it. And so that goes with your cow's productivity, your animal's productivity as far as weight gain. If it's a cow-calf operation, are they coming into heat on time? Are they calving? What's the weight of calves? What's that overall body condition, body score of those cows? How are things going? And getting some numbers behind that is what's going to help you manage that. And so you got to have some measurement. And with your hay, it's the same deal. You can measure it by sending it off for testing, by weighing bales, by doing all those things, and that's going to allow you to manage your feed. It's going to allow you to manage that feed intake. So,
right.
And there's a lot of technology out there to measure things in this industry when it comes to feeding cows, raising cattle, raising hay. There's a lot of tests out there, a lot of metrics to keep up with.
Well, I think we've definitely, I think years ago we started turning this corner, but the corner has turned where the herd management practices and cattle management practices are now more of a science than ever, right?
Yes,
we're now more focused on the science of it. If you're trying to effectively manage your herd, obviously there's a lot of people in it for different reasons, and what you're trying to get out of it matters. But I'm a much smaller cattle producer than my friend Caleb. I want to raise good animals. I want quality animals.
Take good care of them.
I'm really want to make sure, I just really like good looking cows. But
me too. That's the thing. It's like, and you want to keep them good looking, good, and it's just like,
and it's part of being a good steward.
No, that's exactly it. It's just like anything that's in your care.
We
want to take good care of them.
We're supposed to be taking care of these animals. That's our. You're gonna pin them up. It's your job. So.
You keep them fed. No, that's. Look at dogs and look at the pet market and the pet food market and all that, and the gourmet foods that they've come out with.
It's nuts.
All that. It's got to be a multi-billion-dollar industry just in dog and cat food.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so now we've got a lot of people dipping into cattle, and cattle. I'm not going to say they're necessarily a pet. They're a lot larger. They're a lot more to take care of.
They taste better.
They do taste better. They taste a lot better. But there's a lot of people that.
I guess I've never had I don't know that for a fact. I've never compared it, but I just assume.
I haven't tried dog, but I figured cow would taste better than dog.
I assume so too.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people dabbling in cows, buying a small place, 5-10 acres, buying a couple of cows to get an ag exemption.
Yep.
And that's great. And I think it's a really cool thing. I think it actually is a window of opportunity for an education into just food production.
Well, that's like for me. I've got Toby out there, my 4-year-old. He loves the cows. We're learning about cows. We got a cow named after him. We're doing a lot with the cows, and so I think it's a pretty cool thing that's going on there, and I think it's kind of a thing you can get your family involved in.
No, it absolutely is. It gets the family involved for sure. And
Well, it's commitment.
No, it is, and that's the thing. You got something that's relying on you to be fed.
But you know, the best part is, you know, the right time of the year, you can walk away for a little while. You know, it's like you don't have to be there every day.
That's
you know,
true. No,
that's where our cows are this time of year. You know, I've got good grass out in our pastures, and I can, you know, you don't got to be there. It's not like we're dairy cowing it. You know,
No, that's the thing. I mean, with most places, you know, especially we get a little rain, you get a little grass growing, they can manage themselves for a little while, and that's the beauty of it. You know, now with the show cow thing, we're a little more tied.
Yeah,
we're a little more tied to them, keeping them in a barn under fans and trying to grow that hair on those Maine-Anjou and Shorthorn cows. But you know, from a commercial standpoint, yeah, this time of year is great. We're putting up some hay and we're letting them graze, and you know, they're pretty self-sufficient. So it's not, you know, you're not just having to handle them every day for something, or you know. So it's
well, any final thoughts? I want to wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
We're at 25 minutes.
Yeah.
What do you? Yeah, we've been at this a minute.
That's it.
So, what? Any final thoughts as we roll this one up?
You know, I think.
Did you catch that? As we roll this one up.
Roll this one up. As the old net wrap speed light rolls on.
The old rolling it up.
Man, just, you know, it's a beautiful industry. It's a beautiful thing to be involved with, whether you're small or big. It's a hard one to get involved with, but don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to have some humility in asking those questions. I find myself being humbled every day in this business. So,
well, there's always something to learn. I know we're usually a lot of the first points of contact, and a lot of the reason why we shoot these videos is to provide some education and to kind of provide some pointers and just, you know, kind of get it out there. Let you kind of, you know, think about it and things like that. You know, I enjoy that part of it. I've really been around large ag more than the smaller. This is relatively new for me, but I mean, it's been a few years. But I've been around the ag industry. There's just something about it, man. Even on the tractor side of business, there's just something about being out in the fields and working the land. And I tell you what, I mean, just my personal beliefs, if you want to be close to God, this is where it's at. You know, looking over the horizon at the sunset. I mean, there's just something about this life that it's just a little sweeter.
Yep, it's a beautiful thing.
Well, y'all, we're gonna bounce up and down and finish up rolling up this field. Y'all subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and I'm just gonna drop a little, you know, future hint here. I think Caleb and I'm gonna leave it mainly to Caleb, but we're working on a podcast, and we want to cover some more of the topics that might be of interest to you if you're new to the area, you know, if you're new to the rural lifestyle and things like that. We got some exciting plans coming along. Hopefully we'll get this showroom wrapped up. We'll have a place to actually do it. But anyway, y'all take care, and we'll be in touch.